I really wanted to see if in Web3 we can also build upon the Web2 SaaS model in a sense. It's kind of interesting where when you have a steady cash flow in Web2, that's great. You can, base your evaluation of it. But in Web3, sometimes it's almost frowned upon.
Welcome back, folks, to the Bitcoin live stream. This is Frederick, and I've got my co-pilot here, David, and we have our guest, Annabelle Huang. She is the co-founder and CEO of Altius, which is a Web3 infrastructure company. And you guys bring high performance to any chain at the execution layer. That's your tagline. We'll get more into that. So before we do that, I'd like to know a bit of history about you. How did you get into crypto?
Yeah, well, that's kind of story down the memory lane. So I was working in New York on Wall Street as one of the FX traders at a bank. Started looking at crypto, but mostly just trading it. Didn't think I could make a whole career out of it, but by chance. So I went to Carnegie Mellon, and there were a few CMU alumni that were building the first generation decentralized exchange on top of Ethereum.
What year
back in 2017. And that was the first I have heard of you could actually build things on top of blockchains, because I thought Bitcoin is just what you buy and you hold. So I started researching a lot more into it. It was a fantastic team. So I decided to take a leap of faith. I left my job on Wall Street and dived right into DeFi back in 2018.
Wow. I call that faith, So 2017, 2018, that's the time of the ICO boom. Did that play a factor in your choice?
To be honest, the reason why I didn't join until 2018 was because the 2017 ICO boom, I felt like there was so much noise, a lot of scammers. I wasn't sure what the space was about.
Right.
But I did take some time to look at, despite all the noise, what is the underlying technology? How is it different from maybe the Web2 or the fintech era? And is there an opportunity for me or for a new generations of talents to do more on top? So I actually waited until kind of the ICO boom died down before I decided to fully take the plunge. And when I realized, even after all that, there's still serious people, smart talents working in the industry to build for the next 10, 20 years, as opposed to, a quick sort of ICO scheme. So, yeah.
Can I ask you two follow-up questions about that? One, it sounds like Bitcoin wasn't the thing that pulled you in. It was like Ethereum.
That's true. Well, Bitcoin is, I have held Bitcoin from maybe when I was in college. I went to a very technical school. People were telling me about Bitcoin as more of a distributed system or cryptography related project. So I thought, okay, that's interesting. I bought it when I started trading FX. Then I started to look at Bitcoin, Ethereum as more of a currency or commodity. Right. So I traded it, but it was really Ethereum and the smart contract and the capability to build things on top that drew me to build full-time in the industry.
Sorry, one last follow-up question. You were not dissuaded, or you didn't have second thoughts when the bust happened in 2018? You were like, oh my God, what have I done?
Well, definitely everybody's taking inventory on what your crypto holding looks like then. But I think I was really driven by being able to work with a great team. AirSwap was under the consensus boat led by Joe Lubin, one of the Ethereum co-founders, and just the smart people all around to build things and really truly believe in the future of finance or decentralized finance. And that to me is almost like reliving the fintech boom moment that I felt like I had missed, especially I was born in China and all of the Alibaba, the WeChat Pay, the fintech craze. I felt like that was maybe my opportunity to do that again.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think that segues nicely into what your company does, because you talked about smart contracts, the technology, and Ethereum being the kind of blockchain that has now segregated, the execution layer and the consensus layer. We'll get into that. But first, before we do that, I know it's related. Tell us about your company, Altius, how it works, and why do you call it the company that will bring high performance to any chain, because I thought that's a big claim, but
Of course.
you can go into it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to quickly say that after AirSwap, I spent the next sort of 6 years focusing on bringing liquidity to crypto. So playing more of a market making or liquidity provision role, leading Amber Group. And now it's listed on NASDAQ as well.
Yeah.
But the true passion is really what I said earlier, to be able to build that foundation for using blockchain as infra to build the foundation of the Web3 world. That's why last year I decided to leave and build Altius to really tackle the infrastructure gap before I see really the next wave of adoption on chain. So we're talking about financial applications. Sure, we can be satisfied with what we have now, but can the top high frequency trading firms actually trade more assets or even more Web3 native assets on chain? The infrastructure doesn't support that yet. So I want to tackle that. And that's why I teamed up with my team, my co-founder, who came from 15 years of experience building core infra at Hudson River Trading, to really leverage the knowledge we have in Web3 and also in Web2 and distributed systems to build Altius. And what we mean by bring performance to any blockchain is really decoupling the execution layer from the blockchain stack and bring a lot of optimizations around it within that specific layer that then can be plugged into any blockchain ecosystem or any blockchain stack. So our role is to not build another fast L1 or L2, but actually building the infra solution to empower crypto native teams or institutions, enterprises to build their own high performance chain.
Yeah. David, any comments? I know you've got the computer science background.
So
does that intrigue you in any way?
no, it does. It does. How does this work in practice? Could you walk me through an example?
Of course. So, for example, there are a few of the app chains are currently using maybe an OP stack that's and building a L2 on top of Ethereum.
Yes.
OP stack is great. It gives you the stack you need to build an L2. But within the OP stack, it's still using the OP EVM, which is the same as the Ethereum mainnet. And that technology is built more than 10 years ago. So how do we scale that without requiring the teams to rebuild the whole chain? So what our idea is, you can use the OP stack, but at the same time, you can also use the Altius stack. And we will give you, for example, the Altius EVM that incorporates parallel execution with more optimized state access that addresses a lot of the EVM bottlenecks. One is that EVM execution sequential.
Yeah.
There is definitely better ways, multi-threaded ways to handle or to improve there. And then around a bottleneck around database read-write bottleneck, that's also a huge one. So we're working a lot around databases and state access optimizations.
So the goal then would be, for example, please correct me because would be to like a team could kind of remove the OP part of that open stack and then plug yours in its place.
Correct. It's just via one API call.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
To get that instant upgrade. And our goal is to not just a one-time upgrade, but we'll continue to maintain our stack to do more and more optimization. So the teams working with us will always get the up-to-speed or up-to-date infrastructure. They'll always stay at the forefront of the performance side. So they can focus on building the ecosystem, building the adoption that they need.
So your potential clients, your potential customers would be basically blockchains, L1s, L2s, and that's the people you're going after.
Yes, and I think more so, we're seeing more of the app chain demand these days, where I think applications realize that in order to maybe bring more adoption or to build better UI UX for their users, they also want to customize more of their stack. And it's hard to do when you're building on top of Ethereum or, for example, Solana. You cannot ask the huge underlying chain to just customize one thing for you. So they're looking to own more of their underlying stack as well. But actually building infra takes a lot of technical expertise that maybe the app builders don't have. So our goal is to be that technical partner for them to bring high performance as a baseline for their own app chain.
So do you foresee, I guess, the base chains? First, let me ask this, I guess, this way. So you've got a lot of these app chains that are adopting the stack. But do you see some of these base chains, the L1s, at some point also adopting your stack after it's been proven at the L2 level? Do you think they'll be more willing to then adopt it at the L1 level, starting with maybe, the EVM, the original EVM, like Ethereum?
Yeah, that's definitely part of it. The way that we design our architecture is that it doesn't work with just EVM L2s. It works with other L1 architecture as well. Obviously, there might be more work involved with the layer one, depending on what their existing architecture is. But even now, we're seeing more enterprises or even more apps looking to build their own L1 instead, right? With Stripe, with Robinhood. I guess Robinhood is building an L2, but Stripe is building its own L1. Circle is building its own L1. So I think maybe there is this more debate around what is a better architecture, L1 and L2. There are different trade-offs, but we're here to service both use cases. As an L1, we're also a modular execution layer that can work with their existing consensus design and the rest of the architecture as well.
So Stripe and Circle, you don't have to disclose this if you are not allowed to, but are they by any chance using Altius?
I would say currently not, but we have a few other partners that hopefully we can announce soon. And that's more centered around trading use cases. So specifically for DEXs or perp DEXs that want to bring higher frequency trading on chain. So we're super excited about that. That's also, what our backgrounds are. So we understand what they need.
Are you getting more interest from like app chain projects or more like just base layer, like general purpose chains?
I would say actually a combination of both.
Yeah.
There are applications are thinking about building their new app chain. So that's kind of like working from scratch. How do you design the most performant L1 or L2 that caters to their need? And then with the other pocket, the existing ecosystem, they have the need to upgrade without rewriting or redoing the entire stack. That could take years.
Right.
So they're interested in a solution that maybe bring that upgrade they need within a matter of weeks. And that's what we are here for. And I think it's interesting because we spoke to a lot of the L1s or L2s are very closely tied with the exchanges. And I think they're also realizing that with the rise of Hyperliquid, they also want to be competitive there. They want to build more of their own on-chain ecosystem as well, not just within their centralized exchange side. So that is actually a pretty big trend.
I mean, they must be scrambling with like Hyperliquid kind of punching them in the nose in the past year. And so they need a performance, ostensibly decentralized kind of version of themselves. So, yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting because when we start building this maybe a year ago, I get a lot of questions like, why do we need performance? There's enough chains and people not using it. And then when Hyperliquid launched, you see that when you build a very performant, purpose-built chain, and that can bring good UI UX is what users need. You can see the difference there. So I think I'm glad that validated our thesis.
And what do you see as your biggest challenge? I always like to ask this question because in crypto you also have this cultural obstacle, as it were, to overcome. So for example, you've got a chain that has certain values, they have developers who have certain values as well, and they want to develop in a certain way and work with certain kinds of companies that are open source, that are pro-privacy, that kind of stuff. That's kind of the challenge that I would see, depending on the kind of chain you're working with. But maybe you can tell us what challenges you see in getting other chains to adopt your stack.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you're quite on point there. I think when you're building your own infrastructure stack that's so crucial to your ecosystem, then I think when you're looking at upgrades or you're doing something else, you would try to do it in-house, or maybe you would try to work with third party, and sometimes maybe you want to keep it in-house, or you want to go out and acquire certain solutions. And I think that's pretty similar to Web2 situation as well. Like, do you use use a SaaS solution, or do you try to build it in-house, or acquire teams to do it for you? I think we're seeing similar dynamics here. Although I would say the Web3, I would say our industry is still a bit more open-minded, happy to try out early open source products and build together, especially I would say from the West. That's what I observe. People like to build together, keen to try out each other's stack and seeing the improvement there. Like, we're a part of our stack is built on top of Rust Ethereum that's done by Paradigm and using their open source hardware, and our partners will be using what we provide. So I think that's what I love about Web3 as well, is there's more decentralized collaboration between the teams.
Okay, that's awesome. All right. Another thing that I wanted to ask was, and you might have seen this. So Bitcoin is not like other blockchains, right? Like you've got nowadays you have the fancy chains, and they like I said, they segregate. Yeah, the chain, right? But still, Bitcoin is still this 400-pound gorilla in the blockchain world. And I was curious and this doesn't have to be something that you're attempting to do, but if you were trying to get like the Bitcoin core team to upgrade the Bitcoin blockchain, because it's, what is it, 5, 7, 9, whatever,
5,
TPS?
yes, basically 5,
right?
7, yeah.
It's the one thing that would probably make the biggest difference. Like if the performance went up.
Sacrilege.
Yes. Now,
We've been through that before, right?
yeah, cultural debates aside, how would you, if Altius was assigned to upgrade the Bitcoin blockchain, how would you go about doing that? Just hypothetically.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I don't think it would take just the LTS team. It would take a much bigger community effort, just given how decentralized Bitcoin is.
Right.
Ultimately, you need all the, all the node operators buying, validators buying to be able to upgrade.
Yeah.
Correct. And I think from a technical perspective, we're definitely still a bit ways away from being able to optimize the Bitcoin side better, just because we need to build a virtual machine first. Bitcoin is so simplistic. It's beautiful, but simplistic in a sense how it's set up, that we've seen so many other teams are trying to build BitVM on top of Bitcoin, or other sort of ZK solutions that can allow for certain smart contract capability. So I think once we are able to get to that stage, then that's where LTS can come in to apply our stack to the BitVM, for example. And whether that is sort of like the Bitcoin base layer, or maybe it's some sort of like an inside chain. I think it really depends on what the users want. But I think, I think that should be driven by use cases as well. Right now, I think most people are happy owning the Bitcoin, maybe trying to use it for some yield optimization strategies. But do we need high frequency trading to happen on top of the Bitcoin chain? Right? I think exactly. So
I have my personal.
So I think we live in a multi-chain world. Maybe we should look at what is really needed to happen on certain chain instead of just scaling. But hopefully one day we'll get to work on something within the Bitcoin ecosystem as well. I think that is the one thing that connects all of us.
Right. And do you have any other areas in terms of blockchains are about performance, but there are many other things as well. Interesting consensus protocols and mechanisms that have been put out there. Do you guys focus on other aspects of blockchain technology besides just the core performance of a chain? Would you go into other areas as well?
Yeah, so I think performance comes in really all layers. I would say we took a stand to focus more on the execution layer. It's because we see there's a lot more low-hanging fruit, or immediate improvements we can bring.
Less competition too.
Yeah,
exactly. A lot of the teams that come from similar backgrounds are opted to build their own high-performance chain. So there's no one building this as a stack that we can offer to the different chains that might need it. But when we think about performance, the consensus layer matters as well. That is ultimately how everybody agrees on the final state of the chain. And there's a lot of overhead and networking around it. There are different ways to address it. And I think we definitely collectively as the industry spend a lot more time researching to consensus and new consensus protocols than we have paid attention to execution. That's why we wanted to tackle execution, but at the same time, we're also experts around consensus because it's very closely related. And when we work with other layer one partners, the questions inevitably are, okay, we've agreed to the execution. Are there next steps or other areas we can improve? So I would say we look at it as the full stack, but our first iteration of the core product focuses more on the execution layer that nobody else has really tried to optimize before.
Are both of those layers equally as modular by nature, like consensus versus execution? To me, just as a layman, it would seem that consensus would be a little more tricky to do like a Lego block.
Correct. Actually, I would think the more legacy chains, sort of maybe before the 2017 era chains, most of them have coupled execution and consensus together.
Yeah.
And it's more of the modern chains would be all the L1s using the Cosmos stack, and then we could put an EVM, like execution on top. Then we're seeing more modular fashion. And then 2-3 years ago, we have Celestia taking out the data availability layer and then really pushing out the modularity. So I think we've definitely seen the iteration of the technical stack and the improvements there, iterations there. But I would say, it really depends on what the existing architecture looks like. Sometimes maybe it's not modular at all. Then how do we think about improving performance within that?
Yeah. Also, I think maybe from a cultural perspective, consensus tends to rile people up more, right? Because you get into questions of decentralization and what.
Correct.
So,
yeah.
It would probably be a lot harder just from a cultural perspective, even if the tech is there.
Exactly. But sometimes I think there's also give and take, right? What's the sacrifice between maybe decentralization to a certain extent to catering to what your users want on your ecosystem? We can argue that some of these more performant or the most performant chains are probably the least decentralized. But I think, you give users the choice to choose.
So we've basically solved, I think what Vitalik called Zico's triangle. Is it safe to say? So that was security, scalability, and decentralization.
Decentralization.
Yeah. So you guys have solved, is it safe to say?
I think we're at a given, maybe, I think of it as maybe the different axes. At a given level, we're just trying to push performance as much as you can with a given decentralization percentage, I guess.
That's fair enough. So we're live here in Seoul, South Korea. I'm not sure if you've had a chance to walk the floor, or if you know of any interesting projects that are maybe not even at this conference. But is there, besides your projects, I know you're high on Altius, right? But are there any other projects that you either know about, that are here or not here, that you're excited about, or that have caught your eye at this conference?
I was just about to say, because this conference is so hectic, I barely got to walk around, mostly trying to find my way through things.
You get lost? I got lost.
Multiple times. I got sent to different floors, and then at least I made it here and made it everything on time. But I wanted to just say what I observed, because I've over the years I've been to so many different crypto conferences. But I think in Korea, I think just the level of participation and the demographic of the attendees here is so different. I do see that the retail adoption and intention here, where you're seeing not just industry participants, but actually people that are curious about the space and coming. And they're oftentimes drawn by not by a very heavy infra or jargons, but by plushies or some different IPs. And look at where people are lining up. Yeah, spinning wheels. And I think that's just that's also interesting to think about. Okay, what does adoption mean, and how we drive that, and what each of our role is. So it's always interesting to be here in Korea and really feel that different vibe.
David, any interesting things that you might want to ask?
I had one or two, but we're running out of time, so I guess I'll just
condense it into one.
So What's your business model? How do you guys make money?
It's a great question. So I really wanted to see if in Web3 we can also build upon the Web2 SaaS model in a sense. It's kind of interesting where when you have a steady cash flow in Web2, that's great. You can, base your evaluation of it. But in Web3, sometimes it's almost frowned upon. And I think here people understand the revenue versus business model as much. I think we're moving to an era, a new paradigm where the industry has matured even further. The retail investors or institutional investors care a lot about what your project is doing. Is it a sustainable business model? And we're seeing some of these tokens that have outperformed is because they have a clear buyback, sort of revenue-driven tokenomics.
Actual revenue stream.
Exactly. So the way I'm thinking about it is we are the infrastructure provider. So it could be similar to a SaaS model, but we still have the network value that we can monetize further via the network. And we want to work with various L1s, L2s. It could be, and I want the business model or the partnership to be more long-term. So instead of charging them like a one-time integration fee, we actually want to be maybe part of their validator network or their sequencer network. So we are participating, we're maintaining the network, and we're also participating in the long-term success of online chains that we help empower. So I think that's also something unique about Web3 as well, of different tokenomics that you can let that happen.
Yeah. And sorry, one last one.
Yeah.
I know we talked off camera. You're going to be at Token.
Correct.
I was wondering, are you looking forward to anything other than your own stuff at Token?
Of course. I mean, Singapore is what I call home. So it's always great. And seeing everybody there as well. We are hosting more of a founder-focused events with the Ethereum Foundation and Optimism and a few others. And also just wanted to see what other new trends there are. I think there's a lot of talks around stablecoin, around RWA, and if you guys want to see what maybe Singapore or Asia as a region, what the direction it's going, then I think Singapore is a great place to feel it out.
We'll be there.
Yeah, and I think Asia is off to a good start in terms of making an impact on the crypto ecosystem. So there you have it, guys. Annabelle Huang, she's the co-founder and CEO of Altius.